Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I take a look at the last 5 new to me board games that I've played, and I rank and review them in order of preference. The 5 games I'm talking about today are pretty interesting. There's some that you might not have heard of, but before I get into the games, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor, keyender.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 5, I have Druid, also known as Darkness. Now this is a bidding game where you're trying to bid with these fixed cards, so you're not actually ever gaining any more money or currency in this game. Each round the player's going to have the same number of cards in their hand, which they can use to acquire these kind of item cards. You're trying to collect these items, the more the merrier. I'm trying to collect sets, etc. to get your victory points. The bidding system here is pretty unique though, where each of these items is assigned a primary colour as well as a secondary colour, and the cards you're bidding with all have a colour assigned to them. So you have, say, the 3 yellow cards, the 3 blue cards, and so on. And then what you're doing is you are playing a set of 3 cards face down and then revealing them at the same time. And then you can kind of assess what the state of play is with what the other players have put forward. Then you're playing another 2 cards, and then you're playing a single card. So as the game goes on, you can kind of try and get into the head of your opponents to see what they're going for, maybe zigzag at the right time, because if you bid exactly the same as the other players, then they're going to cancel each other out and you're going to waste your turn essentially. So it does have a kind of chicken mechanism as well. So I like the way that you can kind of put quite a brief assessment of all the different item cards, thinking, there's a lot of blue here, so maybe I'll go with blue as my primary colour, or maybe other players are going to do that, so I'll go for something else. And again, you're just trying to acquire these cards, build up your points as you go. There are some secondary systems as well though, so there are these kind of darkness cards that go into the separate pool, and if you don't counteract them as the kind of winning player really, then you will have to discard down to the amount of item cards as the weakest player. So it does have this kind of passive catch-up mechanism where if you're really running away with things and acquiring loads of the item cards, then your attention is going to be spread too far so that you can't really do everything at once. You might have to focus on getting rid of those darkness cards or risk losing all your other item cards, which of course will give the other opponents an opportunity to catch up with you. And on top of that, if you play certain arrangements of colours, then you can get these really powerful like action cards that will let you break rules, such as being able to bid blindly or just get pure victory points. And so on. So it's actually a very clean game. It's a lot of fun, at least the way it flows and how smooth it is, and just the general idea of the game. My only issue is that you could kind of create your own methodology of how you bid each time. So you might say, each round I'm going to have a look what the most numerous card is in terms of the colour, put most of them as my number 3, and then go for my secondary colour the same with the second most popular colour. So sometimes the decision can be taken out of your own head, and you can just play without thinking about it and probably do quite well. That's probably my only nitpick, but of course that is a real nitpick, because if everybody's doing that, then they're going to cancel each other out anyway. So again, it's a game I don't really have many faults to find with, apart from that one thing is if you play on an automatic mode, then the game could fall flat and you could feel like the game is playing you rather than you playing the game. But still, it's a nice one. I think it's definitely flown under the radar, and a lot of people could enjoy this one. I think it's generally quite well received with the people who have played it. Also looks very nice on the table. So that is Druid, also known as Darkness, at number 5. At number 4, I have Tucano. So this is a simple set collection game as you're trying to build up this display of cards. All the cards depict fruits and score points in different ways. So think of something like Sushi Go in the way that these cards score. So some might say the more the merrier. Some might score increasing points until a certain number and then start scoring new decreasing points. So you want to balance it just right. And so on. You can imagine how all these different sets are built up. Now the way you draft these cards is pretty interesting, and it actually reminds me of a game called Coloretto, which is a very popular set collection game, where you each round are stocking up these columns of cards you're picking one of those columns and then filling up all the columns again with a new card. So it kind of has this idea of you want to strike when the cards are just right for you, but try and contaminate the other columns for the other players. So if a player has a really particularly nice, arrangement of cards, you might want to try and build it up a little bit more so they're forced to take cards that they don't necessarily want to. And that's pretty much how the game works. It's got a very simple back and forth. Your turns are lightning fast. And there are also some additional quirky rules that I'm not sure if I'm super keen on them, but I can see what they're trying to go for here, where as the game progresses, you can kind of give your cards away to the other players or snatch cards from other players. And there's even this quite interesting rule where if you take a certain card, all your existing cards will go face down, meaning they can no longer be stolen, but you cannot look at them anymore. So you're not quite sure exactly how many more cards you need to complete or contaminate one of your existing sets. So it's pretty simple stuff. There's a lot of competition for this game out there, but it's a good example and it's pretty good fun, very quick. It looks nice and it's got a nice flow to it. So that is Tucano at number 4. At number 3, I have Time of War. So this was a game I knew nothing about when the publisher reached out to me to cover it on the channel. And I'm really glad I took up that opportunity because this is definitely a quirky game. It's quite a weird one. It's a hybrid of bidding with a bit of kind of war game antics as you're rolling dice to fight each other, and also a degree of negotiation. So the idea of this game is that you are racing to get to, I think it's 15 points, and you're going to get those points by bidding for them. So you're going to simply, the kind of bidding around is really dynamic because it's a free flow system where you are moving your little markers up on these different grids or these different tables. Also, the higher number means you're bidding more, but as soon as you outbid the other players, they can then move those markers somewhere else. And the things you're bidding for are simply victory points. They are these kind of item cards that can score you bonuses if you have sets of them. You've got these like special ability cards. You've got these banks that will increase your income. You've got these kind of cities that will increase your troops as well as other things, and so on. So there's a lot of different fields you're kind of fighting on here to try and win everything, and all of them are necessary, and you can't really ignore one without the other. You know, for example, you need troops because if you don't have troops, then the other players are going to attack you and steal all your money or all of your item cards and so on. So it really is about striking that balance and building up a good amount of money so that you can start outbidding the other players to acquire more victory points. Now, the negotiation part of this game is actually fairly interesting because, you know, naturally as things goes on, especially because the game is quite luck driven when it comes to combat, you can start conspiring with the other players to even split your bids to acquire certain things. You could say, you know what, let's split the bid here on taking these troops, but then we'll maybe divide the troops up and so on, and that can obviously help you catch up and work with each other to catch up with the leader. There's also an additional touch that I thought was really interesting where there's a fixed phase where you kind of assess the state of play and you think, I think this player's doing really well and I'm going to vote him as the strongest player. And the same goes with all the other players. You kind of do this ranking system where you rank all the other players and where you see them, and then whoever's got the kind of fewest amount of votes will be like rewarded with extra resources, but whoever's got the, you know, who's deemed as the strongest player will get nothing. And it's kind of this little tiered system as you are trying to work out who's doing what. But of course, a lot of the information at all times is hidden behind your screens, so you don't quite know how well everyone's doing, and you have to kind of keep mental tabs on everybody. The combat is pretty basic. You are simply pairing off your troops, or committing troops if you're the attacking player, which will compare against the defending troops' army, and then you're rolling off dice and pairing them off your highest to highest and so on. And if you basically win the battle, then as the attacker, then you will steal the chosen resource that you want. Again, it could be money, it could be item cards, it could be lots of different things, and that will set you up, even their banks and stuff, to help you generate more income. You know, I went into this game completely blind. I wasn't sure what to expect. After reading the rulebook, I thought this could go one of two ways. It's either going to tank or it's going to do, you know, well. And I think it did do well. At least everyone had a good time by the end of it, and we all thought that was way better than we were expecting it to be. And this is probably one of the rare occasions where I think luck dice driven combat was actually the right choice for this, because it means that the game ticks along at a much better pace. And even though, of course, the roll of the die is random, you can really mitigate the odds by investing in a stronger army, which, of course, the odds are going to level out as the game goes on anyway. So I think rather than being a really deterministic, brain-burnery combat, this game said, you know what, let's just make it a dice roll, and then we'll put the kind of more thinky mechanisms with the auctioning and the negotiation instead. And I thought that was a really good choice. So all in all, I was pretty impressed by this one. It is self-published, so the graphic design is very basic. This is almost like clip art style, but I didn't hate it because the graphic design didn't get in the way of the mechanisms or the fun of the game, actually. And there are some nice little components as well, such as these little army meeples and so on. So I think if you like negotiation games, you want something that's a little bit out there, a little bit different, then don't look over this one. I'd say give it a look and see if it's for you. So that is Time of War at number 3. At number 2, I have Hit Extreme. So this is a reprinting of the Knizia push your luck game called Hit, or also known as No Mercy. It's a simple little card flipping game as you're trying to reveal cards, trying not to get duplicates after your initial 3 cards because you'll go bust and basically waste your turn. But a lot of the cards will have different abilities on them that will kind of let you give cards to other players, or instantly bank cards for points, or do a little gamble where you can flip the next cards and bank them straight away if they're all different. That kind of thing. This game does have quite a cool mechanism that actually reminded me of a game called Rapido, or also known as Escape, which is actually a really nice touch when it comes to adding a kind of player interaction and kind of keeps your attention more than a lot of other push your luck games that when it's not your turn, you're not really interested. This game and the aforementioned Rapido do a really great job, because after your turn, once you've done your little push your luck game, as long as you've not gone bust, the cards in front of you will sit in front of you until your next turn. And if they're still there on your next turn, then you'll bank them as victory points. But the twist is that if on another player's turn they reveal the same number as you've played, then they'll steal that same number from you. And of course, the denominations of the numbers are quite widely spread. There's a ton of a certain number, or only a couple of the really high valued numbers. So it forces you to pay attention on other players' turns, which is what I really like about this one and Rapido. I think it's a really good idea to force that added engagement into the game. The artwork is nice. It's got a nice kind of clean graphic design. I think if anything, my only criticism of this game is that I think it could be maybe a little bit wacky at times. I'm not sure if it's tried a little bit too hard to try and make every card be a little bit more different, to add in rules that aren't terribly intuitive, such as these elixir cards that you are forced to put in front of other players, and when it comes to their turn they bank that card instead of their other cards. I can completely get what they're going for, but I think it takes away from a little bit of the clarity of comparative games like Circus Flocati, which is a much more clean push your luck system. But still, this is a good one. I don't think it's a great one, but still I like push your luck games. Again, I do like that additional touch of things not being safe until your next turn. But that is Hit. I'm glad I've played it after all these years, because I have wanted to play it. It's a good one, but not up there with the greats like Circus Flocati, in my opinion. That's Hit at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Hadara. So this is a game that's been on my kind of periphery vision for quite some time. I've always wanted to try this one, but I'm not quite sure why I never took that plunge and managed to pick it up myself. But I finally did, because I managed to find a very cheap copy, and I kind of kicked myself why I didn't pick this one up a lot earlier, because this is an excellent little engine building, little tableau building card game, as you are drafting these different coloured suits of cards in order to build up an engine which will do lots of different things. So for example, you've got your yellow cards that will let you increase your income of currency, or you've got your blue cards that will let you build these statues which will boost your other stats. The green cards will pay for the food to pay for your existing cards that you've collected, or even the red ones, which are kind of your military cards, which will allow you to colonize these different islands to get victory points or even boost your stats further. It's a lovely kind of smooth, nice flowing game, as each round you're just taking 2 cards, you're choosing one to add to your tableau as long as you can afford it, that is, and you're discarding the other to potentially be drafted later. But the game has a nice escalation to it, because if you keep on taking the same coloured cards, then they get cheaper for each one you've taken. So, you know, for example, if this card cost 5 coins to buy, I already had 3 of them, then I'd get a 2, then I'd only have to pay 2 because I get a 3 card discount on them, which is great because you end up getting really powerful cards at the end of the game for next to nothing as long as you've invested in that colour. But of course, there is an incentive to spread yourself thinner by getting one of each colour, because at the end of each round you can invest in these medals, which will score you a really strong amount of points for each set that you've collected. The progress in this game is also really interesting when it comes to the economy side of things, because in the first round, when you discard a card as not to buy it but to get rid of it, you can get like 2 coins per card. In the second phase, it's like 3 points, and in the third phase, it's like 4 points, or 4 coins, I should say. But also, the cost in buying those medals that I mentioned increases dramatically. So it kind of rewards you to commit to something earlier because it's much cheaper. You know, even though your economy is a lot weaker in the earlier phases, it's still, I think, proportionately cheaper to kind of commit to something then as to see what happens and then commit depending on how well you've done. So it kind of punishes you for being kind of non-committal, if you want to put it that way. Lovely kind of satisfying turns, because each round you're just kind of boosting your tracks. By the end of it, you're getting tons of income each time. Some of the special powers on those purple cards are also really interesting, such as, you know, when you cash in a card, you get an extra coin, so your personal economy is going to be a lot better. Or when you buy these coins, it's cheaper, or these types of cards, it's cheaper, or you get this bonus, or you get an extra boost on this colour, and so on. And it's one of those games that you can't really do everything. So you might want to commit to one thing over the other. You know, are you going to go real strong military this round and colonise every single island that you possibly can? But if I do that, I'm probably not going to build every statue that I can. Or am I going to do a bit of each and then go for those go for those medals instead? Still, it's got enough strategy to keep you hooked long term, but it's tactical enough to kind of keep you hooked turn after turn, and you can't wait until it's your next turn and, you know, to choose the next card, because they're all kind of good and they're all balanced, in my opinion. There doesn't seem to be some strategies that are better than the others, or some cards that are more worth going for. It just seems to be like a very highly tuned and finely polished game that I think works a treat. And it actually reminds me of a game called St. Petersburg, which is one of my other favourite card-driven Euros. Love this one. It only takes around 45 minutes to play, and each time I play it, I like it that a little bit more. It's just so versatile. You know, Euro gamers are going to love this one. Gateway gamers are going to love this one. Yes, the theme might be a little bit dry and maybe a little bit vague, and you know, nothing terribly engaging. It's quite generic, I should say. But the gameplay is strong enough to be highly enjoyable, and the fun factor is high, in my opinion. So that is Hadara at number 1. So there we have it. That concludes another ranking video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.